Absolutely. Because I look at it like this, Ocho. I might not want my job. I might not like the job. But until I got another one lined up, I'm going to stay my black ass right here and get every penny.
Yeah.
Punch that clock. Ching. Then I'm going to check out.
Yeah. But see, it's easy for you to say, it's easy for us to say that, because we don't know what the hell going on. We don't know how they have him feeling after he's had surgery.
Ocho, I knew I was leaving Undisputed. Guess what I did?
Yeah.
Every day showed my black ass up at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew 3 months. I knew 6 months in advance.
Right.
Didn't nobody know. My sister knew. My brother knew. My agent knew.
Yeah.
But guess what? You couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Because hey, man, I ain't finna forfeit this hip money.
Yeah, you're right. But listen, that's how you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. As you can hear from that clip, Shannon Sharpe was basically in jest or in reference to the Brandon Ayuk situation, was talking about how his tenure at Undisputed ended and how he knew it was over 6 months prior to the fans or the general public knowing. But he so essentially faked it until he made it at the end, which I thought was kind of interesting because Shannon, when he first left Undisputed, he was very, tight-lipped about the situation. He was very, gave a lot of gratitude for Skip for taking a chance on him and all these things. But now we're starting to hear bits and pieces of what actually went down towards the end of his tenure at Fox Sports and with Undisputed. Because he said that last 6 months he knew he wasn't going to renew his contract. Only people know was him, his family, and of course his management knew this. I'm assuming his lawyer too, but with much leverage as he had, it made more sense for him to make this decision. But I'm not surprised at all about this, but I'm just surprised about the timing, about him knowing 6 months in advance, because there was a lot of turmoil, if you can remember, on that show towards the end of his tenure. And it probably was around like 6 months before he ended his tenure with them. Because I want to say he ended in the summer, and that incident with the Damar Hamlin situation happened around the playoffs or right before the playoffs, because it was like week 17, which could have been around January. So yeah, that timing adds up about right when I think about it. But because they had those huge arguments towards, I want to say it started from January or around December of the year prior to, because I want to say he left around June or July. But that Damar Hamlin situation, like I talked about before, was a huge argument that they had, because Shannon Sharpe had a unique stake in it because his brother's career ended due to a spinal injury, I believe, Sterling Sharpe. And then Skip made those insensitive comments about when the game is coming back on, what are you going to do about the rest of this game? And a lot of people took that as insensitive. I did as well, because, it was more at stake at the during that game, because we thought a player lost their life. So it was very insensitive of Skip to bring up those things at that time, because everybody else was just thinking about, man, this is terrible. Like, what is going on? We had never seen anything like that before. So Shannon, of course, he missed that episode that Monday because the game was that Sunday night. He missed the game. Well, it might have been a Monday night game, but he missed that next episode. And once he missed that next episode, we were like, oh, it's something going on, because they really didn't have an answer for it. I don't even think Skip had a co-host. He might have had a co-host, but it was very awkward. And then when Shannon came back the following day after that, they had an argument to open the segment about if Skip had to apologize, and Skip refused to apologize. It was very stubborn on Skip's part, but it was very awkward. And that was just the beginning of the end, because they had several arguments about the play of Baker Mayfield, which they clashed over. They definitely had a heated argument about Tom Brady. Shannon was saying that Tom Brady wasn't the same anymore, and he's the reason why they were going down. Of course, Skip is not going to take that answer, and they got into this big heated debate or argument because Skip called out Shannon's playing career and said he was jealous of Tom Brady. So it got very ugly at the end. So we knew the end was, coming, especially after that Tom Brady argument. But, them being on the show for about almost 6 years, we thought they were going to figure things out, and maybe they just needed a little time away. But it never came to fruition, because that last episode that Shannon was on, after the show wrap, they showed Shannon embracing everybody after the show, but he didn't even look Skip Bayless's way. He was, shaking hands with the cameraman and hugging makeup artists and stuff like that, but he didn't even look Skip's way. And Skip never got out of his seat and never looked up. He just looked at his paper like he was busy. So you can tell it was tumultuous at the end, regardless of what they said. Shannon, Skip is hanging out with Shannon, with Stephen A. Smith now. So it looks a different way now. So it looks bad. But Shannon was, I think towards the end, I think Skip knew that Shannon wasn't coming back because he was trying to incite him or get him to act out a character. And I feel like he was trying to get Shannon to do something he didn't want to do, to get his contract over faster. Because we know when Shannon left the show, that show went to the crapper. They, tried to replace him with a slew of different people like Michael Irvin, Richard Sherman, and it was some good episodes and decent episodes, but no great episodes like Skip and Shannon had, who was originally made for. I believe the show only lasted less than a year after Shannon left because it just wasn't the same effect. You didn't have the same eyes and ears. You didn't have the same bravado that you had, because Shannon had those colloquial sayings and he had those different outspoken outtakes, and he gave a Charles Barkley like assessment of things sometimes, and it made great television. But Michael Irvin and Richard Sherman are great as well, but it was more of insight into plays and to the game plans and things like that. It wasn't comedy like what Shannon brought, so it was definitely different. And I was sad to see that show to go, because I always say that Undisputed show was my favorite sports show, especially debate, of all time, because ESPN First Take is just built around Stephen A. Smith, and they just interchange a bunch of pieces, and it's too much going on, too many moving pieces, too much. Seems a lot of political with that show because it is owned by Disney, and we know how strict Disney is with their policies and things like that. So I just can't watch it the same. It just feels like they're doing a lot of things for ratings and a lot of things for clouds. They're saying a lot of sayings, and they had Kendrick Perkins standing on a box that said business, so he's standing on business. It's a lot of different cloud chasey things that they're doing. And First Take was Undisputed was never that. It was just, we're going to give you the content. You're going to address issues that no one else is addressing, especially during the Black Lives Matter movement. They addressed a lot of those issues of unarmed black men being killed, and nobody else was doing that. And until this day, they still don't. So that show was very brave. And I think they wanted to get rid of that show because of that, eventually, because, it was just too honest. And, TV is not made for that, unfortunately. They don't want that. But we, as the fans and the viewers, love that type of stuff because we want to see what they thought. We didn't want them to sugarcoat anything, and they didn't. And I always commend that show for being able to do that, to talk about social commentary, because sports is not just sports. It is how it affects you off the field and how it affects the players off the field as well. And in the grand scheme of things, and how it affects their play. But yeah, it did seem a little weird at the end because it just seemed like it was very tumultuous, and Skip knew, even though Shannon didn't say that Skip knew he wasn't going to renew his contract. It felt like Skip knew that, because it became very less cohesive towards that last 6 months, especially after the DeMar Hamlin situation. So tell me what your thoughts about Shannon Sharpe's comments about his last 6 months prior to leaving Fox Sports and Undisputed. And until next time, I'll see you next time.